Happy World Adoption Day! Hi guys, so today I'm going to be talking a little bit about adoption, and I filmed a video like this, I think it was 3 years ago now, where I answered some questions about adoption, and I'm just kind of doing an updated version of that. New questions, some might be the same. I do want to preface by saying that all of the answers and anything that I say in this video is just my opinion, and again, like, I am just one person, so obviously like my experience is not everybody's experience, and that's okay, but I just think it's something that we need to remember while watching the video. Hopefully I can teach you something, open your eyes to something, and just we can all just learn a little bit more about adoption and clear up some misconceptions about it. A little bit about me. Hi, my name is Buhle. I am 21 years old. I am adopted, obviously. I asked on Instagram if anybody had questions about adoption for me. My mom also asked on one of her adoption groups there, like, if the parents on there had any questions that they'd like me to answer. So those are the questions that I'm going to be answering. I wrote them all down on my phone, so I'm just going to go through the list and do my best to answer the questions. The first question is, if the child in question has a sibling, should the adoptive parents adopt both, even if they can only afford or support one child? I mean, obviously in a perfect world you would want to keep siblings together. I think that's very important to do, especially like when both siblings or all siblings go into the system. Then obviously best case scenario, all three are adopted together, but I also think like if you can't, then hopefully somebody else can take all three in. And if that doesn't end, like, that should be the first option, is obviously that's not the right word, but obviously the children should be taken in by somebody who can look after all of them. So yeah, but obviously if that's not possible, then ideally it's somebody or two sets of people that are willing to keep in contact and allow the relationship between the siblings to still exist. How do you feel about white people adopting people of color or people with different cultures? I don't think that there's anything inherently wrong with white people adopting outside of their race or culture. There's nothing like inherently wrong with that. The only problem I see is if the white parents don't learn about the culture or the race, or like educate themselves about it and also educate their child about it, allow their child to still have those cultural experiences and, you know, the things that make you up who you are. Obviously, like, the white culture will be part of the child in some way, obviously, because that is how you were raised, but it's important to allow the child to have some sort of a connection to their roots. I am adopted by white parents, so I'm very lucky, and I know that not everybody is very lucky, in that my parents did allow me to have, you know, experiences outside of just like the white culture. Like, I had those experiences, I had opportunities to learn, to be a part of other cultures and, you know, just learn about it. So I think it's very important that we do that, because, you know, your culture, your race, it's a huge part of your identity. Just because you grow up in a white household, it doesn't change the fact that your skin color is different and that sort of thing. We can't just ignore those kinds of things. We need to embrace those differences and learn about the differences, because I think those differences make us all unique. Are there good courses/resources to educate adopters about other cultures? I think that the biggest resource that we have at our disposal is the internet. I think there's so much that we can learn on the internet. You just Google and you learn how to immerse yourself into a culture, like whether it's cooking food from your child's culture, learning how to do their hair in said culture. There are so many resources on the internet that you can use, like they are at your disposal 24/7. I think there isn't really an excuse for not allowing children to learn about their culture. The internet is the biggest resource. There's books. There are so many books that teach you about different cultures and ethnicities and races. So yeah, there's just endless things in the system that should be improved. I am not entirely sure. I think, you know, the system is like a case-by-case sort of thing, but like if I had to go like based on my experience, it should just be the timing of everything. Just it needs to be a little bit quicker. It's very slow, it's a very lengthy process, and I understand obviously there's a lot of work that needs to be done behind the scenes, but the department is slow. Just the communication between like the department and the social workers, because it's very slow. Like, advice for those who want to adopt in the future: like, do it because you want to adopt, and like not for any other like funny weird reasons that people have for adopting, but like truly because you want to do it. And obviously make sure that you're educated. If you're adopting outside of your race, outside of your culture, just make sure that you're educated and that you're willing to educate the child placed in your care about their background, about their history and that sort of thing. I think that's very important. Be willing to learn. I think that's the best advice that I can give. Oh, and as strange as this may sound to say, because it's actually a thing that happens all the time, like go through like the proper channels to do it. Don't engage directly like with a biological parent or that sort of thing. Like go through the proper channels. Don't do it like through Facebook or something like that. Strange as it may be, people out there do that. So I think it's just very important that we all know like there's proper channels that we need to go through. So go through the proper channels. Don't do any like backdoor adoptions, because that's illegal. What do you think are the most important qualities that adoptive parents should have? I think one of the most important things that an adoptive parent should have is just be able to be understanding, because although adoption is a very happy thing, it also comes with a huge amount of trauma. So I think it's very important for adoptive parents to be understanding and understand that your child essentially like has suffered a loss, even though that they've gained you and gained a safe house and, you know, all of those good things. It's important that we acknowledge those losses and acknowledge the trauma that led up to the situation, because although it's a good thing, something bad had to happen in order to receive this good thing. I don't know, you just gotta love your child, you know, and you know, just understand that your child is going through some things that you're not necessarily going to understand all the time. I think that one is the most important thing, is to just be super understanding of what your child has gone through. Because for me, the situation with my biological parents, it's, you know, it's not the best, if I can say that, but whenever I was feeling some sort of way about that situation, my parents, specifically my dad, did a really good job of just listening to me and hearing me out and letting me talk and air out my frustrations about the entire situation without really adding his opinions like into my thoughts. Like he didn't like let his opinions about the situation cloud my judgment or, you know, mess with the way that I was feeling, like affect the way that I was feeling about the situation. Like he was very good at just like letting me feel my feelings. You know, you can't take it personally, because essentially it's not about you. As an adoptive parent, it is not about you. What ways do you help an adoptee feel a sense of belonging? I don't know, you love them, you treat them, you know, the same as your other children. You just yeah, you love them, you tell them that you love them, and you let them know that they're wanted. A big thing for me was before I was adopted, a thing that really helped me get my sense of belonging, even though it was before I was adopted, was just getting my last name changed on all the class lists at school, because that kind of that made me feel more secure. It made me feel better. Like, I was very happy when that happened, because it's not nice having a different surname to everybody else in your family. So for me, that was a big thing that happened, and I thoroughly appreciated that. I loved it. I was so ecstatic when my surname finally changed on the class list. Even though my adoption wasn't final, I was just like, okay, I can breathe, like, it's happening, it's going to happen, like, I'm here. What is the most difficult thing about adoption? Obviously, like, the trauma that children come with, like, from adoption. Like, even if they're adopted as a baby, there can still be trauma associated with the whole situation. So obviously that, but I think for me, the biggest issue that I ever had was just people, like other people, just staring at at my family. Like, me walking with my parents when I was younger, it was just like everybody's just staring at you, and you don't know what to do, because like, when you're 6 years old, what do you do? These people are all just staring at you. So I think that was definitely one of the most difficult things, because it always made me feel like is there something wrong? Is like what's going on? Like, why are these people all staring at us like that, So obviously I think that was really difficult. What's the one thing that you wish you had available to you as an adoptee? I know that, I think so, like, obviously people are gonna expect a much deeper answer to this, but for me personally, and I'm not even ashamed to say it, I want my baby photos. That is what I want, because also I was adopted at a later age. I was not adopted as a baby, so I just want my baby photos. It would just be nice to have them. But I always say to my mom that I am her cutest baby, and she can't tell me that I wasn't, because she has no proof that suggests otherwise. So I am my mother's cutest baby. Is an approach of "we don't see color" / Rainbow Nation helpful? No, I don't think it is. I think it's a very harmful mentality to have. Like, obviously, your race should not be the focus of your being, but it's important to acknowledge the differences and acknowledge the differences of treatment amongst the different races, because if you're adopting outside of your race, your child, when they go out into the world, they're going to have extremely different experiences than you would. So it's important to acknowledge those differences. Obviously not focus on the differences, but it's important to acknowledge them and to learn about them, because your race is a huge part of who you are. It's a part of you. Like, you can't hide that. Like, bruh, like, you can't hide that. Like, it is who you are. So it's important to know who you are and be proud of who you are. And you never want race to be at the forefront, but it's so important to acknowledge the differences. It sucks to say it, but it's like, that's how you're going to be treated a lot of the time, is because of your skin color, which sucks. It absolutely sucks, but it's important to be realistic about it. It can be a bit harmful to not to say that you don't see color, because in saying that, you're saying that you don't acknowledge the disparities or the differences in treatment, that sort of thing. You're saying that doesn't exist, but it does exist. It's very real for a lot of people, so we have to acknowledge that. And in acknowledging that, we have to acknowledge that we are different colors. How could white parents help their children face racism and discrimination? Gosh, That's a difficult one, I'm not even gonna lie. I think obviously it's important to educate your children about it and be honest and upfront about it, so that it's not a shock, because the reality of the world that we live in is there is racism. You will be discriminated against. Like, it sucks, but it's a part of the world. So it's just teaching your child about it, being very open about it. I don't think it should be a secret. It's like, it should just be something that you speak about, and you should be able to have open and honest conversations about it. With my parents, like, I think for as long as I can remember, like, we've always been able to have those conversations, those difficult conversations, and like talk to them about our experiences, and obviously how it differs from what they experienced. You know, it's very important to just like have the space to talk about it. And let me tell you, I don't think recently, but like definitely in the past, when, you know, there's been a situation, I think I definitely have gone to my parents and complained about white people. And obviously my parents are white, and you know, it was just like the frustration of the moment, and I was just saying, like, you know, because this person was racist and I just needed to let it out. And obviously my parents knew. I'm not talking about them, I'm not talking about all the white people in the world. It's just something that I need to do, because in that moment I was frustrated and could not cope with the racism, and they understood that and they let me air it out. What is cultural identity, and how has adoption influenced your cultural identity? I think this also goes along with the next question, is do you feel you don't have a sense of culture and identity? So for me, I think I said this in the last video as well. I'm gonna say this like 100 times in this video, but I'm very obviously black. My parents are white, so in theory, like, we have different cultures, like different biological cultures at least. So my parents, you know, they've done a very good job of exposing me to different cultures, and I was allowed to experience those cultures. So I say that, you know, I've got my white culture and I've got my black culture, you know, from all of those experiences, from my friends who let me join in on things and, you know, that sort of thing. And there's me, you know, and I just have a good mix of both. I feel like, I don't know, I think I am South African is the best way for me to put like what is my culture, because I have such a mix. Did you ever meet your biological parents? Do you know why they gave you up for adoption? So this one is, it's not tricky, but it's just, I have to like give a little bit of detail. So when I was small, like 4, I had to be removed from the care of my biological mother. And then my biological father didn't know I existed until like right before I got adopted, essentially. So yes, I have met my biological parents. However, I choose to just, you know, not have a relationship with them, and you know, that's just my decision. However, the door is always open for me to have a relationship with them. My dad is in contact with my biological father, and they kind of like keep up to date between the two of them. And I just don't have contact, but that's my decision. So I know that if the time comes that I will have the option to go and seek out that relationship, but for the time being, it's not something that I want to pursue. So yeah, I'm just gonna keep it like that. Did you struggle growing up knowing that you were adopted? No, I didn't think so. I mean, obviously, like, there was issues. Actually, no, do you know what? I struggled growing up from not being adopted, because my adoption took like 600 years to process. So I struggled from not being adopted. But yeah, I didn't think I really struggled with it. Like, obviously it was quite obvious that I was adopted, so it wasn't like, it didn't come as a shock to me. I was there for all of it, and I mean, old enough to remember, that's what I mean. But for the most part, no, I didn't struggle knowing that I was adopted. Like, I'm adopted, I'm very open about it. Like, if people ask me, I'll answer. It's not a big deal for me. Having been raised by white parents, do you find it difficult to connect to Black/African friends? Are you excluded? Also, the impact at different phases of growing up. So growing up, I think I've always kind of had a very good mix of friendships. Obviously, there were people who did bully me, and it wasn't even so much for the fact that I was adopted. It was just more that I couldn't speak any vernacular, so I couldn't speak any African language. So I was bullied for that, but not for the actual fact of being adopted, but I was always able to make friends with everybody. So obviously the kids who bullied me, I wasn't friends with them, but you know, the other kids I was friends with. So yeah, but no, it really hasn't made it difficult for me to connect with Black people. Like, yeah, a good chunk of my friends are Black. And now it sounds like I'm like, you know, when people get in trouble for being racist and then they're like, yeah, but my friend's Black. You see, that's what I sound like. I don't think I've really ever struggled. I think I've always just been good at making friends in general, so it's not really been a struggle for me. Should birth family always be given more chances to raise their children? No. I'm going to explain, so don't like click off and like shoot me already. But I don't think so. I think obviously, you know, in the beginning, parents should always be given a chance to look after their child. But if time and time again, you as a parent can't commit to being clean or whatever the issue is, like you can't commit like to be better, do better, etc., then at some point it's gotta be like, no, like you are not in a good space to care for this child. Obviously it shouldn't be the first resort to just like take away the child forever. Obviously people should be given an opportunity to clean up, to fix up, and to heal and do the necessary things to make themselves better. But after a certain amount of time, the back and forth for a child is not going to be good. Like, it's really not going to be good. You're going to like feel so unsettled. I don't think, you know, both parents should have like an endless supply of chances. You also have to think of the child here, you know, what's in the best interest of the child. This back and forth, or just to have one stable, loving home where, you know, they will be well taken care of, where they don't have to worry about what their parent is doing, that sort of thing. Because I think the second it starts to affect a child mentally, then it's time to cut it. Like, we can't put a child in that sort of situation. It's not good. And I do want to reiterate, both parents should be given a chance, but at some point you need to cut it off, because at some point it's no longer in the best interest of the child to remain with the biological parent. Is birth family always best? Like I just said, obviously if there's issues of like drugs, abuse, whatever the case is, I don't think in those scenarios it's best. Ideally, you know, we would love for every single child that is born to remain with their biological family and be raised healthily and safely and all of that good stuff in a perfect world. Unfortunately, we do not live in a perfect world, so it's not always going to be the best. But I think birth family should be a first option. But if that first option is no longer viable, then you've got to move on. You know, something needs to change, especially if the birth family isn't making the appropriate changes to house a child safely, like, you know, take care of their child, feed that child, so on and so forth. Then a change needs to be made. Birth family is just, it's not always best. It's not. Like, for me, it was not best. I think the second it stops being in the best interest of the child is when it's no longer best. Is long-term foster care the same as adoption from an adoptee's perspective? No. Coming from somebody who was in long-term foster care, it is not the same as adoption whatsoever. I don't know how else to put it except that you feel so unstable. You feel that at any second, you know, somebody's just gonna come and rip you away from your family. Like, I was with my family, I want to say, for 6 years before I was adopted, and those 6 years were hard. They were hard for me, like, because I didn't know what was happening, and my social worker wasn't great. Like, my social worker kept telling me that I was gonna be adopted by X date, and then I wouldn't get adopted. Like, long-term foster care, it is so difficult. I think it's also just like, it's emotionally like tiring because you just don't know. There's just so many unknowns, and that thing of like anything can happen at any given moment, it's horrible. It really is. Like, I would not recommend long-term foster care. It's like, for me, it wasn't fun. Like, it wasn't fun, because at least when I got adopted, I knew, okay, I'm home. Like, this right here, this is my family now, and nobody can do anything about it. Like, that was the difference for me. Whereas like with foster care, I was just like, today they can just come and be like, okay, we need to move you. Like, also, I am very lucky in that I stayed with my same family the whole time I was in foster care. I was not like rooted like up and down, like moved around. I wasn't like, none of that happened to me, so I am very grateful for that. But even then, it still wasn't good, just because anything could happen at any given moment. So, what are the stigmas about adoption that you have personally had to overcome? I have to Google stigmas about adoption because I don't know what stigmas about adoption exist. Real parents, real siblings, real family, real equals biological. For me personally, no. I think it's a big thing that people love to do. It's like, do you want to meet your real parents? Do you want to, your real siblings, your real parents, that kind of thing. Like, people love to use that word. And for me, my real parents are my adoptive parents, like my mom and my dad. Those are my parents. And you'll hear I use biological mother. I use biological mother. Why can't I say that? I use biological mother and biological father to refer to my biological parents, because essentially that is what they are. They are just biologically related to me, and that is it. But DNA and egg and sperm does not make a parent. I think being a parent is so much more than just like giving birth. It's loving a child, it's raising a child, it's even yelling at your child sometimes. But like, I think being a parent is so much more than just obviously pregnancy is difficult, but it's so much more than that. That's such a small section. Like, my parents are my parents because they raised me, they loved me, they cared for me, whereas my biological parents are just that, biological. We share some DNA, but that doesn't mean anything because I don't know who they are. I mean, like, I know who they are, but like, I don't know them. When it comes to telling your children that they are adopted, is there ever a wrong or right time to do it? Is it something you let your child know from a young age that they are adopted and you aren't their biological parent, or is it something you introduce them to in their teens or once they reach double digits? Okay, So for me personally, obviously I was older when I got adopted, so I knew nobody had to tell me I was I was older, I was there, I remember. But obviously for some other people that's not going to be the case. My personal opinion is that you should tell the child, like, from the jump, like, whether you make it into a story for them to grow up hearing or whatever the case is, I think it's important for a child to know, because it's a huge part of your identity. I spoke to my mom about this the other day, and she said that it's recommended that you tell your child before they become a teenager, because when you become a teenager, you're going through a lot of hormonal changes, you're going through a whole separate identity crisis, and we do not need to add finding out that you're adopted to this identity crisis that you're already having when you turn 13. So yeah, I think it's important to tell a child long before then, like, to not even make it a big thing, just normalize it. Normalize the conversation surrounding the fact that they are adopted. It shouldn't come as a surprise. It shouldn't be some big secret that you reveal or whatever. I think it's just something that needs to be naturally spoken about in the house. Do you recommend adoption? Yes. I think as long as you're doing it for the right reasons and you're willing to learn, you're willing to, you know, improve on yourself. Don't adopt for, like, to make yourself feel better, and, you know, like, do it because it's something that you genuinely want to do. I definitely recommend it as long as it's for the right reasons and you're willing to educate yourself. Okay, so that was the last question. I hope that I've done a good job of answering your questions and educating you along the way. If you have any more questions, feel free to ask me on my Instagram or even in the comments down below. I will try to answer what I can. Yeah, so that's all from me. Please share this video for other people who might be curious, might be interested. Bye.